Have you here, and thank you all for coming. We are the Egyptian Student Association. Our aim is to forge an alliance with MIT and Egypt as much as we can, and we have a lot of objectives to achieve this, and we host a lot of events. But if you like us on Facebook or follow us on Twitter, you will get much more updates, and I don't want to go into many details about that. I guess it's all available online. However, we are very glad today to have Dr. Essam Heggy, Egyptian scientific advisor to the president, and Dr. Essam Hussein, our events chair and also a research scientist here. I would like to first thank Dr. Heggy for accepting our invitation and coming over. Thank you very much. I would also like to thank you all for coming and thank our esteemed guests and honored guests. Also, I would like to thank the AV and the MIT police. Thank you very much for helping us out. We would like to announce that there's an upcoming event on the 11th of February. We're screening a movie called We Are Egypt. If you follow us, you will get much more information about that. Now, about today, I will not take any much longer of your time. All what you need to know is who is moderating our session today. So Dr. Essam Hussein is a molecular virologist. He obtained his Doctor of Veterinary Medicine and Master's degree from Zagazig University in 1999 and 2003, Master's degrees and respectively, and he worked as a teaching assistant, then Associate Lecturer of Virology in the same university from 2000 to 2003. He earned his PhD degree from the University of Cambridge, UK in 2007. He did his postdoctoral training at the National Institute of Health and Kansas University Medical Center. Currently, he is a research scientist at MIT, Department of Biological Engineering. His research interest is focused on studying the evolution, transmissibility, and pathogenicity of avian influenza viruses. He will be definitely better suited to talk about this at length. Essam is serving as events chair in the ESSA Executive Board of 2013-2014. Essam is a dear friend of mine, and I'm very happy he is moderating this session. So without further ado, please welcome Essam.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks very much for being with us today, and I would like also to thank Dr. Essam Heggy for accepting our invitation to come and speak here at MIT. I would like also to thank our diplomatic delegates who came all the way from New York City and Los Angeles to be with us today. Actually, Dr. Farouk Al-Baz was going to be joining us today as well, but due to some unforeseen changes in his plans, he couldn't make it. Last but not least, I would like to thank the people who are watching the online streaming of this event on the YouTube channel. So with all the current events happening now in Egypt, the first thing that jumps into your mind whenever you hear Egypt in the media is politics, right? And we hosted Professor Chomsky a few weeks ago, together with Professor Nazli, who is with us today, to give us their takes on the political scene and what's happening in Egypt right now. Today we have something different for you. As you could probably conclude from the title of the event, Egypt, the change to be through science and education. So we are here to talk about science and education. We are here to discuss the future. We are here to discuss where Egypt is going to be on the map of science in a few years from now. And that's why we have Dr. Heggy. Dr. Heggy is a planetary scientist at the NASA Jet Propulsion Lab, and he is a visiting associate in geology in the California Institute of Technology. He is also currently serving as the scientific advisor to the interim president of Egypt. He was born in Tripoli, Libya, in 1975, so he's a quite young man. He lived there until he finished his elementary education. Then he moved to Tunisia with his family, and then returned back to Egypt to join the Faculty of Science, Cairo University, as an undergrad. He earned his bachelor's degree in 1997, which was followed by a master's degree in planetary science from the same university in 1999. It was not an easy ride for Dr. Heggy by all means. One of the stories that he likes to tell about his early struggles in his early scientific career when he was a short-term visiting scholar in Paris, and he went there to find out that his scholarship was suspended to some mysterious administrative glitch. And he had to stay with an Egyptian expat living in Paris and living on donations for 9 months until he finished. So he is a quite determined man. He went back to France actually in 1999 to do his PhD in astronomy and planetary science in Paris University, and was awarded his degree in 2002. Then he moved to the US in 2003 as a postdoctoral fellow in the Lunar and Planetary Institute in Houston, Texas. Then he began working for NASA, JPL, in 2009 as a research scientist, and his main research interests are in the planetary geophysics and applying radar imaging and sounding technology to study water surfaces in Mars. He is currently a member of the scientific team of the Mars Express Orbiter project and the Mars Exploration Rover mission. Dr. Heggy held his position at as an assistant professor at Cairo University until 2004, when the university administration requested the immediate cessation of his research activities at NASA to return back to proctor student exams. But he had a different view. He felt like he had something more important to do, and he left his job. And this is actually how I crossed roads with him, because I have seen a very similar fate like the one he had. We met for the first time in Maryland back in 2008 when I was a postdoc at the NIH. And since then, we became very good friends, and he has been a great support for me and a great source of inspiration. And with this, I will stop and pass it over to Dr. Heggy. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Heggy.
Well, I would like to thank everyone in the Egyptian Student Association and the thanks to Islam for having me here. And I want to start by saying one first thing, that I'm not a politician, and I lived all my life as a scientist and educator, and believe that the science and education is what we lack the most in these moments in Egypt. We definitely, every day you open your TV and you see all these turmoils, injustice, the violence, the bloodshed. You see a nation that is trying to stand up and to change, but that change will never happen only through political process, because without education there is nothing named as democracy. If we are in this room and we agree on something, doesn't mean that we are all right. It could mean that we are all wrong too. What's the guarantee that the voice of the majority is a step forward is education. And by a clear look to the number on Egypt, we have 42% of our nation unable to read a document. We have more than 60% of our nation that is not even able to understand a text, simple text, read in Arabic. I know that you have not faced this in the university, that those from you who are from Egypt haven't seen this in the neighborhood in Cairo. But if you travel across the nation, you see how we desperately need for that education. So many people ask this question, why we need a science advisor, why now? I mean, we need a science advisor. This is an overdue position because we are in a transition period. And in order for that period to transit to something good, we need science and education. And we need your vision to that science and education. So in my talk, I would like to talk about a little bit what I do in my life. I spend my research looking for water in the solar system and how this can help Egypt, why someone who's looking for water on Mars is trying to help on water issues in Egypt. And then we talk about the main science challenges in Egypt. Believe it or not, Egypt have science challenges, not only political challenges. And then we'll see the education challenges we have, and then how the path to move forward from where we are right now. So basically, I will start. Yes, I'll start by talking about water. So my job is to look for water in the solar system. Water is free, it doesn't cost anything, and I look to it in remote environments. So actually no one care about looking for water elsewhere, but in fact it's very important. If you see the planet, our planet, the blue planet, is the only planet that have the liquid water, but it's not the only planet that have water. Every body of the solar system has water and has water in the gas phase or the ice phase. Our planet is the only one now that have water in the liquid phase. Which means if you look to Mars, the red planet just above our own, it was one day our sister planet and it had water, then this water disappeared and Mars ended up by being a desert. So why we look for water on Mars and why this is something so important for the community, what it has to do with Egypt. If we understand the processes that have transferred the planet Mars from a blue planet with an aquifer system, with an hydrosphere, which means water on it, into a desert, we can understand how our own planet, the Earth, is changing as function of the climate change we are living on. And again, my presentation is very simplified, so if you have any question, please do not hesitate to ask me. So Mars is half of the Earth, so if we project the United States on it, just will look like this. So with being half of the Earth, Mars wasn't able to maintain an atmosphere because of the escape of the gases. So Mars was one day blue. Potentially this is an artist view of Mars had potentially had the global ocean like the Earth, but now it's a desert. And again, understanding how this has occurred and the time scale where this has occurred tell us something about when we lack water and when we go through an extensive climate change, how we will be. Now, finding water on Earth is a charity program. It's made by the United Nations, USAID, the FAO, UNDP, European Union funds, you name it. Finding water on Mars is a science and technology program. In fact, in 15 years of mapping water and trying to understand water on Mars, we come to understand a better understanding of the water situation on Mars than in Eastern Africa. In Eastern Africa, we've been trying for 50 years to understand that the groundwater system, the throw-out, the desertification, and we still see people dying from the lack of water. In Africa, we are not yet able to resolve the problem, while we have come very close to understand it on Mars, because this is a science program and this is a charity program. And ask yourself this question: have you ever give money to someone who is begging in your street and find them next day working with you in MIT? It never happened, because charity will always keep us poor and will keep us in a need for the others to sustain our basic level. So it is that rationale that has caused to have a science advisor. We cannot resolve the water situation, which now we know, all of you, that Egypt is facing big challenge on the water situation with the dams being constructed in Africa. So we have to step in. We have very few time to resolve this issue. We have less than a year. And I would have loved that I came in a different time, or times where things are easy, time when the funding is available, times where there is political stability, and times where everyone is happy and everyone is in love with each other. But make no mistake, this is for science. If you're waiting for good conditions to do your job, you'll be waiting for a long time. As a scientist and educator, we have to face the impossible to do our role in the society. So when I started my PhD in 1998 in France, I took this project to Egypt and said we want to test these radar instruments that you see here and I'm involved in the science team of the 3 instruments, and I'm the investigation scientist in the MARSIS, which is basically 3 radars looking to the subsurface of Mars, mapping water and ice, few hundreds of meters deep. And so MARSIS was launched in 2003, Charade 2005, Wisdom 2018, and we have the rover for 2020, which we hope we have a 4th radar on it. So when we started this in 1998 with the first field work we do in Egypt, like many of you would like to do something in Egypt, the first response that this was crazy, it will never work, this is not science, this is not what we should be doing. In 2008, where we got the first mapping of the polar layer deposits, which is the ice cap on Mars, we actually ended up by the first page in Science. That was my first paper ever in Science, which we never even thought it's going to be accepted, and we never thought we're going to make the cover of Science magazine. But why we did make the cover of Science magazine? This is the ice cap on Mars, and this is the cross-section made by our radar instrument. And you look to the ice cap, something amazing about it. It's layered. When you look to the ice cap on Earth, our ice cap is one bulk white layer, and sometimes it have some little layers. What does it mean that this has been layered? It means that it has made open different geological era. It means that water stayed on Mars long enough for many times to make these layers. So if water have stayed so long, the same as its scale on Earth, what does that mean? Anyone? Life could have existed on Mars. So we might be the 2nd generation of living entity in our solar system. And that's what basically got to attract the Science magazine. So from that, many missions were designed to go and look for traces of life on Mars. And basically the Spirit rover, the Opportunity rover, which landed on Mars. And you can see every Egyptian will love Mars exploration because it just looked like home. It's desert. And these are the different rover, the Curiosity rover, Opportunity and Spirit, and the Pathfinder. So now we come to the question, again, I would ask, if we wanted people to work on hydrology, why do we need a guy from Mars doing hydrology in Egypt? We have very excellent hydrologists. In fact, there is one thing very good when you work in NASA. All of these rovers you see here, by the standards of any normal human being, all our missions, by any engineering standards, are unfeasible. If you look to the landing on Mars, if you look to the building of these instruments in 5 years, to the average age of people involved in these projects, 28, 29 years, you realize that the power we have is do the impossible in a short time with young hands. And this is today the challenges Egypt is facing. Being a patriotic person does not mean just going to manifestation, does not mean I have to find everything around me being very good to start do my job. It means trying to build the impossible in tough times. So we took all these experiences and then we say, let's apply them to find water in desert environment. And the first place actually we tried that, we have 2 zones. So the first one is the Nubian Aquifer, and the second one is the Dammam Aquifer. And with so many of you do not know actually, this is the prototype of a sounding radar that was tested in 2002 in Egypt. And another prototype of that instrument went on the Mars Express mission and found ice on Mars. So actually, the Egyptian desert was one of the contributors to the studies of finding water on Mars. So the first, what we did is that we take these technology, the radar sounding technology, and we put it on an airborne platform in Kuwait, and then we wanted to see, we had 90 days of funding to try to make this work on Earth. So from the day we met, the 3rd day, to the day we started the field work, the 68 days where we tested the technology of sounding radar on board the aircraft. In the 90 days, just in the last day, we were able to make the first profile, just like the one we had on Mars. This is a 60 meter, it's a 70 meter by 6 kilometer. The surface is here, okay? That's the cross section made by our radar on board the aircraft. And this is the water table. This is the aquifer. And you can see the aquifer, it has a slope going inward here, and this is the discharge location. This is where we are pumping water. So in 5 minutes of flight, you can find the water and you can understand how this water is moving. Imagine now we can do this in the whole desert. Imagine now that we can use groundwater to mitigate shortage of the Nile River water, like like the one we will be facing with the building of construction on the Nile River. So we didn't stop here. After 3 months, we built a concept of a mission, of a NASA mission, that is a concept $167 million mission that is called Oasis, and aim to map the aquifers and the polar ice sheets on the Earth to understand the impact of climate change over desertic region. What I want to show here is that from a simple collaboration with someone, you can start an idea of a space mission, and you can execute that. There is nothing is possible just because it is done in the Middle East. I know the Middle East is not the most attractive place for science, and I know that our pictures and TV is always boxed to violence and craziness. We are always shown as the people who cannot agree on anything together. But if we want to change that picture, we have to work on our education, and we have to work on the science, and we have to put politicians where they should be, aside. And you, educators, should be in the front. So, what about the impact of the climate change over Egypt, which impacting the groundwater and water system? So this is a picture I always like about people do not believe in climate change. So we always talk about climate change, people think this never happened. Every nation think that they are immune against climate change, and especially Egypt. When we talked to the ministers in the past 5 years, we talked, climate of impact change is happening in Egypt. He said, no way, no climate change in my country. This has happened anywhere else. So I showed him this picture. So this is a picture. It's 100 kilometer by 60 kilometer of the south of Egypt, with the border with Sudan, in an area called El Uwainat. It's very close to the southwest of Egypt. And you don't see in this satellite image, it's only see the dunes of sands and the sand sheet. There is no evidence of any water existing in this image. But now let's use the radar technology, which you see few meters deep, and let's see what lies beneath. Now this is visible, radar, visible, and the radar. And you see huge drainage network that are 6 kilometers wide. The basins you see here, these are larger than the Nile River today, which means that in the desert, 60,000 years ago, there was rivers, there was lakes, there was aquifers, and today the remnant of these flows are the Nubian Aquifer, which is the groundwater system we have in Egypt. So climate is changing, and Egyptians hasn't lived all their life on the Nile Basin. They lived before more on the west, in the Sahara, and they moved in the Nile Basin when the climate has changed. So another impact of climate change is the seawater intrusion, okay, that is happening in the Delta Nile. Seawater intrusion is made by the sea level rise and by the effacement of the delta is going down. So in blue, you have the lowland area, which all of them are impacted by seawater intrusion. And what seawater intrusion is causing is reducing the fertility of the land. Once the fertility of the land is reduced, you don't produce enough food. So you are facing two challenges. Seawater intrusion is deteriorating your agriculture. You have a lack of the Nile water. And what are you going to do against this? This is why every Egyptian you know is saying the food prices is going higher. It is not magic. Food prices is going higher because we're lacking water, we're lacking agriculture. And the only solution cannot be made by a politician, but can be made by a scientist. And that we first have to understand these phenomena, and we have to enhance our agriculture system. So a third impact that is very interesting is the melting of the ice cap of the Earth has opened the maritime routes from Southeast Asia to the north of Europe, which originally that route was going to Canal of Suez. So this route is 11,000 kilometers, 7,000 kilometers less than the one we have here. It's a safer route, and you don't go through Canal of Suez, it's free. So why would anyone in the future, if the climate change continue, like to go through Canal of Suez? Especially knowing the risk of traversing and the time and the fees you have to pay. So this is again, and you know that Canal of Suez is the second source of revenue for honey in Egypt. Finally, the Nile. The issue of the Nile. You have heard in TV and many newspapers, and please, anything you need. I learned one thing by being in the president's office, that everything I read in the newspaper is not true. Sometimes I even read, I go to my office and open it, and I see that I am on travel in Ethiopia, and I am just sitting in my office. And another time, there was on TV, I was watching TV, and then they passed on the bar that right now I'm being attacked in the University of Mansoura. I was just sitting on my couch. And how these things happen, who do these things? Before being to that level, I always thought that there is a driver of every bad event. But then after months, I realized it's the chaos who's driving bad event. And the chaos is out of control because we have no communication avenue channel between population, between the government, between different entity, between educational institution. All this need to be improved. So the Nile is exactly this type of problem. So why would someone care about climate change in the Nile? Because it's the only river that goes so much from the south, the equator, to 32 latitude north, which means you are crossing three types of climatic system: very wet, semi-arid, hyper-arid, and arid, and actually four. And actually, you can see that Egypt, the Nile River is a very unique ecosystem. There is about 437 million population that live in the 9 countries that share the Nile, and 240 million persons living on the Nile River. And this number is increasing. And with this number increasing more and more, demand on water is going higher and higher. And with the impact of climate change in this area, in Central Africa, people do not use the Nile River to drink or to do agriculture. They use rain. But with rain becoming less obvious because of climate change, people are using more of the Nile River, and Egypt and Sudan are getting less out of it. So again, Egyptians are impacted by climate change. So you can see here an amazing thing. So these are the total population, again, around the Nile River. But many of you maybe do not know that the Nile River existed on era. So the old Nile is here, and the youngest part is actually Egypt. And actually that is called the Neo-Nile, which existed 120,000 years ago. And the Eo-Nile, which is the source, was here. So in this one, it's very important to see Egypt's dependency on water. Egypt is the country that have the highest water dependency in Africa, which means that 92% of its water resources come from outside its border. It come from the countries which are the basin of the Nile. So what does that mean? That means you don't have any control on your water. You just have to be more efficient in using it, and you have to have good relations with countries in Africa to share this water resource in a proper way and in a just way too. When this water resource lack, what's the second type of resource is the Nubian Aquifer. The Nubian Aquifer is always a huge aquifer system. You see that it's shared between Egypt, Libya, Chad, Sudan. And the Nubian Aquifer is a huge fossil aquifer, which means not getting any recharge. But again, we are sharing it. So now you have to realize that 100% of water resources in Egypt are shared with your neighborhood nation. So in order for you to have a good management of that water resource, you have to have a good understanding of how it is changing and how much you have in it, which actually we do not have that completely made. So what are the socio-economic impacts you see today in the Egyptian society on this scientific question? The first thing is that it is projected that more nations will use more water. Egypt and Sudan will live through more deficiency into water. So they have to have a smarter agriculture system to deal with that shortage. Also, we need to have good agreements between the different Nile countries to manage, again, this water in a just way, as I mentioned. The climate change is going to impact a lot of the water flow that comes to Egypt. There are many scenarios that goes from an increase of 30% of the water flow to a decrease of 70%. Now the question, are we ready for that? Do we have the plans to change our agriculture system for that? The answer is not yet. The answer is we have to do this now. If we are serious about our intention to maintain the food sufficiency for the nation. And also I want to mention, there is no safety when there is no food. Just when people are hungry, when education is deficient, is in deficiency, then there is no talks about stability, democracy, or safety. This is my personal belief, and I haven't seen a single exemption of this law in any nation. So why I'm here? Because we need you. So, and how to prove to you that we need you? I was 3 months ago in my home in Los Angeles. I was back from work from NASA, and then the phone rang at 8 o'clock at night, and someone has told me, we need you in the new government. Actually, they told me a new government has been made, and we need you to help in the water issue. And my first answer was, sorry, I am busy. But then the next day, another phone rang and say, we definitely need you. This is the situation on water, and it's really very bad, and we need your help. And then I said I would have a week to think about it. And in that week to think about it, it was already in the press that I accepted the position. And during all that week, people would call me to congratulate on that position, which was the Secretary of Research. Then after a week, I called saying, sorry, I still cannot make it as a Secretary of Research. So they call the next day, say, okay, you're advisor of the president. And so why I'm saying to you this, because I've never thought we receive such responsibility in such a tough time. And when I thought of it at that point, I thought I don't want to get myself involved in something that is very hard. And I actually thought, as everyone would think of this, I have a happy life. I'm definitely going to lose many things stepping into the turmoil. But then I sit on the couch and I was watching TV, and there was all these bad events we all know. Then I think I'm not good or a better person just because I'm watching it. I'm actually an awful person because I can step in the picture. I can get up from the couch, step into the picture in TV, and make the change. And then I call the next day, I say, okay, I accept, I'm coming. And that's, I think, every one of you will have to make this decision at one point. between your personal comfort, between your personal what you wish, and in fact, not your image, but your role is more important than your image. And actually, there are two places where I think Egyptians can step in and help in this situation. The first, of course, you guys in the United States can come and help. Whatever is your belief, whatever is our opinion, I have different opinion, I take these off when I step to my office. And people in the Gulf area, why? People here, they learned all about science and technology and they come and help. People in the Gulf areas, many of them have the experience of building things from scratch. And that's where we are right now. And that, with these two communities, I think sometimes also they interchange, we can build something. But in order to make our nation attractive for scientists, we have few things that we need to resolve. And actually, the first one is to improve the national infrastructure. If you want to attract the scientists, you have to improve the infrastructure of life in Egypt. The second one is establish religious tolerance. Religious tolerance is not a slogan in songs and in TV. And actually everything in Egypt that turned to a song just died very quickly. And religious tolerance, without it, we will not be able to move forward. There are many international people here. I am one. I came to this country. What makes me most happy is the tolerance. Many of us are here because of the tolerance. So how can we attract people if we don't have any tolerance? I think no one will feel safe and then people will just go. The third thing is to terminate the discrimination. It's often very awful to stand in the mirror and see that we have discrimination. Discrimination of minorities and women's, religious discrimination. It is bad not because I'm saying it is bad, it is actually bad because it exists. And our only way, again, to attract the people is to get away from that discrimination, which we see it in schools, in universities, in workplace. We have to fight it, and there is no better way to fight it than in our educational system. So, the third thing is our education system, as I mentioned. So the values of the different revolutions, and not able to count how many they are right now, but the values, all these values that we claim, these values, in order for them to be real, they have to jump into our education system. If we want justice, we have to show justice in school. If we want religious tolerance, we have to show that in schools. And if you want people to love their nation, you have to have the culture of love in schools and universities. So Egypt is a unique country which is loved by everyone and yet is moving backward. Have you ever seen someone who's loved by everyone around him but he's moving backward in his life? No, because you have a naive vision of what's being named as patriotic. Being patriotic person does not mean you love your country. It means you love your role you play in your country. And if you don't have a role, you don't have a love. And actually, because the culture of love have disappeared into our society, you can insult someone in the street. You just can go in the street and 10 people will insult someone and no one will look. But if you say to someone, like, I love you in the street, you will be hit by everyone in the street. So we have to approve this, that we need that social change. And these are the things we need to change. Not the things we are working on right now. Like, we are fighting each other for text in the Constitution that half of our nation is unable to read. And so with you, the educators, I think you can change this. And I think before we think of being a democratic nation, we have to be first a human nation. And that's where I would stop. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So let me set the scene for the Q&A session first and remind you with some simple rules to give the chance to as many people as possible to ask. Please ask one question. There are 2 microphones on both sides of this room. Please try to make it short and make sure that it ends with a question mark. Most importantly, please try to stick to the topic of this event, which is science and education. If you have any question outside the topic, Dr. Heggy will be happy to accept your question by email, and he reads his email and he answers them. So if anybody wants to ask, please, you can start making lines in front of the microphones.
Okay, well, thank you, Doctor, for a very inspirational talk. So my question is, basically, we all believe in the importance of education and how it can really create an impact, but this is like a very long-term kind of process, so, and we cannot afford, obviously, like time is not in our favor. So what could be like sort of like quick wins in this particular area that can help us get there where we need to before education actually makes a difference?
Yes, it's an important question. So it doesn't mean it's a long process. That unfortunately, there is no escape of that long process. This is like a disease. It's better to have a slow, you're healing slowly than dying quickly. And all the solutions are being proposed or trying to convince people that there is always a magical solution, a quick solution for an everlasting problem, is actually, it's led us to where we are right now. And I have just to tell you that the role of education is decreasing the conflict between 2 people. Let's say many of the people here in this room, we could have different opinion. But look how we address our differences. We don't fight and we don't kill each other. But now you can see in Egypt that for the smallest problem, people can kill and fight each other, actually for a traffic light. And why? Because education helps reduce the amplitude of conflicts. It's going to be a slow healing process. I don't think anyone has a magic way to slow this down. And I don't think it's a bad thing neither, because this is a lesson learned to all of us. No nation is immune from these type of conflicts if it doesn't give attention to its education. So unfortunately, it's going to be slow, but I hope it will not be deadly.
Next question.
Thank you very much for the presentation. It's very helpful and educational. But now, you being part of the government, it's a huge responsibility. Thank you for taking this. But can you tell us about the policies that you're proposing to the government right now, in addition to improving education, because it's going to be costly and it's going to be lengthy? But what are the other policy inputs that you're thinking of being part of the government? Because as you mentioned, that every Egyptian would love to go back to Egypt and contribute to the success of the nation, but at some level it's very frustrating. Now you're the president's advisor, and you should have more vision and concrete idea about all the inputs that should be put into a policy, like a regular policy. Like, for instance, you mentioned the constitution. Yes, we have like more than half of our population don't read, but have you been in contact with the people working on the constitution to maintain some sort of guarantee in the future, other things than the constitution, like a concrete policy that you're tackling right now?
Okay, so
thank you.
Thank you for your question. So the policy I have is very simple. If I look to all political debates, I will not be able to do my work. And probably I'm going to be busy trying to understand different opinions and different things that other people are better than me in doing that. So my policy is the following. I define it as Egypt's strategic scientific goals in 2 phases. This phase for 1 year, what goals can help us to move to the end of this transition phase, and a longer term that are 4 years. So in the short term, we have the water issue for the first year. and the energy issue. So we restarted the nuclear program, which was on hold, and now it went back again to work to get civilian nuclear use of energy to generate energy. And then we started the water management, enhancing water management, and the discussion of the Nile countries on water management. We also started reform of the education system. Reform of the education system is a very unpleasant job because we are a very conservative nation. Every time you try to make a change, people will be unhappy about the change. And I know that many people are unhappy, and every day I go to my office and I'm used to unhappy people. So one person asked me, how do you deal with unhappy? Why you deal with? He told me this. He told me you should be more careful about your image in the media, and should be more careful about your image to the people than what you're doing. Because when we start to make education reform in schools, many have criticized that. I told him one thing: I'm not an actor. I'm not a politician. I don't care about my image. I care about my role. But most importantly, I'm not here to listen to the public opinion. I am here as educator, and as you are, all should be, to change the public opinion. And I would give you a very small history about how you can change that. When I was first hired in NASA, 2002, I was working with some people in the astronaut training program in Johnson Space Center. And then I came to see Neil Armstrong on my first day when I get my NASA badge. Of course, he's a huge person and a very high scientific and person in human history. So I told him, I am just here new, give me an advice. What do you advise someone who's just starting? And he told me, you know this gate that you just passed through? In 1968, when we were training the astronaut, America was in a budget deficit, and the violence was everywhere. Actually, John Kennedy has been shot, Martin Luther King has been shot, America has lost the war in Vietnam. The nation was at its most depressive point. And people will gather in front of the gate his gate to say that we're $20 billion to send a monkey and humans to the moon, because we started with monkeys, was a waste of time and a waste of money and bad ethics. In fact, and the second day we landed on the moon, the same people would come at the gate and more people will come to celebrate that. And that's when he told me the lesson: you are not here to listen to people outside the gate. You're here to change their opinion. And you can only make the change through hard work and through science. And you don't listen to politicians. So this is what I do in my job when I go to my office. Whatever they want to talk, it's fine for them. I think personally that the role of the advisor, the science advisor, is to change science and education. Yes.
I would like to thank you for coming and for your time and your information. From the scientific point of view, I'll try to stick to the topic as much as possible, but it's a touchy subject. So from the science point of view, you talked about water management and energy. Two important sources, two important points. The first point is you're talking about the management of water management. So how can you manage a cup of water? Yeah, are you trying to decrease consumption? Are you trying to decrease the waste? But as long as you take, you're just delaying the problem. You're not solving. You're not making new resources. You're not trying to overcome whatever coming. No way, it's still coming. Improve the relationship might be a good idea, but I think it's not the only option that we have, because we have a long way to go. Second point of energy, I just heard you talking about nuclear power. I think Egypt and its position in the world on a map, they don't need to use nuclear power, because we do have more stuff to use, like sun energy, like solar energy, for example. We don't have as much oil as the other countries, but we do have other stuff we can use. So we don't need to stick to the world technology to follow the lead always. We can come up with our own and be the lead and take the lead in this. So what's your opinion regarding those 2 points?
Yeah, so many thanks. First, on water management, what I mean is 2 things: a better use of water in agriculture and in human consumption, and also a better finding new sources of water. And this is like desalination. Desalination requires energy because it's energy consumption. This is why we have to start a nuclear program. Why we don't have the solar energy? Because solar energy, first, is very expensive. The second thing is it's true we have a lot of sun, but the dust, we have dust too, a lot of dust. And to maintain solar energy in dusty environment need capabilities that are more time consuming and more money consuming at this point than the nuclear energy. Finally, Egypt need to have new water resources by desalination for sure, but also need to enhance its consumption and water policies. There is no way, as long as this nation exists, we can live without the Nile. And because we share it with our neighbor, it is not a shame to have a friendship and family relation. And it was a big mistake to talk with the voice of the force and voice of a dominant over our neighbors in Africa, because we shared this river longer than any government has ruled in Egypt. So that's my answer to these 2 questions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next.
Dr. Essam, thank you very much for the very inspiring talk. It's been a while since we've heard anyone talk about Egypt and not use the normal songs of fire and ice and that kind of high drama. So it's very refreshing to hear a rational perspective that has optimism that's kind of founded. So my question is on that. What are the things you are most excited about? Starting your new job as an advisor to the president, I'm sure you have an overview of the scientific community and the technological community in Egypt. What are you most excited about? What do you think are things that we should, sort of try to take the first, or the low-hanging fruits, or things that we already have that we should work on?
Okay, yeah. So I think the first thing that I'm excited about come from, is one of the word in your question, is enthusiasm. First, I believe we can do a lot of things if we remove the depressive feeling we have in each one of us, because we cannot build a modern nation with a depressed population. And the first thing to remove depression so that people are enthusiastic and start work, there are actually 3 things. As I mentioned, education reform, but then it comes the human rights question, and the third is environment. If you remove these 3 questions, if you resolve them, you will remove depression from Egyptian, and you will be able to build. So many people ask me, I'm excited about these three, so I'll explain. Education reform is having a more comprehensive educative system, a more modern one. This is I'm very enthusiastic about, and especially a more open one. On women's rights, many people say that in the Middle East, we always talk about women's rights to looks like Europe or the United States. In fact, no. You will be surprised that the deficiency in women's rights in Egypt is drowning the economy and is drowning the morale of the people. So you have we invest more in headings, as example, more than we invest in education. Every married Egyptian man in this room or women have invested more in their marriage by numbers than to their education, except these who are paying money for MIT, of course. But myself, and as any regular Egyptian, we pay £5 to go to university in a year, and we pay 500,000 or 200,000 to get married. So people are ready to invest in their traditions more than are ready to invest in their future. And this is need to change by changing the vision to women in the society as a real contributor and not as a part of our tradition. In fact, this is something amazing in school. When we went and see the textbook, I asked a bunch of professors to give me everything is written about women ideology in textbook. And I find it that you can put it in two categories: mandatory things to do, forbidden things to not do. This is it. There is no choice. You don't have to do this, and you have to do this. So how can we grow half of our nation that should not decide on anything and ask them to be part of that? The third thing is environment. The clean street is a healthy society. We have the highest hepatitis C disease rate on the planet because we have the dirtiest public environment in many of the places around the globe. And so without making this a clean environment, we will keep still being diseased. I think the most exciting thing above all of these is the challenge to feel that you can make a change. I lived all my life as someone who cannot change. I just watch on TV Egypt and I'm very sad, I cry and say, oh, I'm so unhappy for my country is doing this. But now that you can make a change, it's a big responsibility. It's actually when I see something wrong in the street, I used to criticize that something wrong. But now when I see something wrong, I want to jump out of my car and go and fix it because I'm accountable for that.
Can I add a very quick thing on the environment? So one of the things that are coming up in Egypt, there's a big debate right now on energy, and I think one of the questions was about that. But one of the ideas that are being thrown around, and in my personal opinion as someone who studies chemical engineering, is a terrible idea, is trying to create an infrastructure for using coal in fire stations. And I've actually worked on specifically that in Egypt for a while, and it seems that the coal intrusion for cement and for power plants, for power plants as well, has already started. And as you know, a lot of the cement factories in Egypt are situated in ridiculously urban settings. You know, like the baseline pollution is really high. So I was just wondering, is this something that's set in stone and is already going to happen? And what is your personal opinion about using coal?
So we talked with the Minister of Environment, and we're trying to resolve the situation. The coal use is definitely not a clean energy. But then when you face people with this, they told you, okay, we don't have the luxury to use the clean energy, and we have to make the balance between urgent needs and the clean energy. So I think this is a topic that's still open, and there have not been a final decision made on it. And but we are discussing it. And today, one of the big advantage actually is that there is no person who really handled a single decision. And even if this image is always lovely to show in the media, and there is one single person who have hands on all this, and I wish that was true, there is not. It's really, we have to go through a lot of discussion with the industrial partner, with the Ministry of Environment, just to try to make the environmental study impact of that. But for now, it's not yet clear.
Tarek?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I heard something and I wanted to ask a question related to it. So with the restarting of the nuclear program, are you, and with the statement that solar energy is actually inefficient at the moment, are you completely throwing renewable energies out of the scope of scientific research or applications in Egypt? Because nuclear energy might be an unsustainable solution and actually very harmful. Yeah. And solar energy, we have the brightest spot on earth in Egypt. I know this for a fact. And if we work in research related to dust removal from materials, so material science research or nanotechnology, also improving efficiency in very high solar areas and all the heat efficiency issues, all of these research topics and its application in the Egyptian context are thrown away for nuclear energy, or are you looking at it in a longer-term vision? Because everyone is moving to renewable energy. I mean, building integrated photovoltaics in European context, and even here in Cambridge, if you look at how there is a support for it, and throwing it in one sentence out of it was very alarming, I guess. So, what is your comment on integration of renewable energy in the Egyptian context in the years to come?
Okay, so the first thing I want to reassure you that we think of renewable energy. The nuclear program is just one step toward a more sufficient energy policy that is in Egypt. Sustainable energy requires a sustainable user, require a new brain. We do not use energy in a smart way. And so using solar and wind energy and all these renewable energy will come in the future when we change a little bit the education of people on how they use their energy. We all know that the future is for this sustainable energy. But Egypt right now have ways and paths to go in terms of technology development, technology adaptation for the renewable energy, and also for the pricing of energy and the policy of energy distribution. So we have that ahead. It's not dropped. It is not dropped. And we are in a historic moment where we really have to plan things right because we don't have the luxury to fail. So like NASA logo, which is failure, is not an option.
Islam? Thank you. That was a very nice answer.
Karim?
Dr. Heggy, thanks a lot for this interesting talk. My question is related to the load that science and research put on countries' budgets, and different countries dealt with it differently, like in India or Brazil or so on. So can you tell us more about what is the best way to invest our money in order to move the science and research in Egypt forward? And is there like a role model that we can follow? Thank you.
Thank you. So first we put a text in the Constitution that 1% at least of the nation income should go to scientific research. So people always ask these questions, why we need science research. Previous vision was that science research is good, but that doesn't lead to anywhere. It was good or bad or anything, but for sure it did not have a role in the Egyptian society. What we're trying to change now, that scientific research has a role, and that role I can explain in a very simple way. Egypt's current economy is a resource-based economy, based on agriculture, water, natural resources like gas, oil, and these all resources in Egypt, if you sum all of these resources, they are sufficient for about 20 million persons. Once we start to exceed that number, poverty started to show. And there is no way to get the economical prosperity without switching the economy from a resource-based to a knowledge-based economy based on industry, a new product. This is like if you compare Japan to Sudan. Sudan has more resources in oil and water and agriculture than Japan has. But yet, Japan GDP is way higher because they are a knowledge-based, technology-based economy. So we're trying to switch to that type of economy. But now that we have a clear vision why we need science research, so we're starting to be more credible about doing it. Previously, it was only a decoration in the picture. So we say we have science research, we have the prices, we have awardees, we have people here. And that was very bad. Actually, it alienated the scientists we are from having a role in the community. And now, and this is, by the way, was one of the main reasons of choosing a science advisor that was not one of these figures. It was just, it's a heavy load, it needs energy, and probably anything you would do will be hated by the large majority, but that's what we should do.
Yeah, first of all, thank you very much for the inspiring talk, and forgive me if this is a naive question, but from my understanding is that underground water is not a sustainable source because it's not being constantly replenished. Mm-hmm. So my question is, one, is that true? And two, if it is true, how can we rely on it with a good conscience?
It is true. Our groundwater is not replenished because it's fossil. It means that it's come from a rain that happened thousands of years ago. So it is used as, I'd say, as a safety deposit where you pump in it as a strategic reservoir. Once you lack water, you can start using it. It should not be used for continuous development. And it's a strategic reserve. In the time of the throwout, like when Ethiopia will build the dam, there will be time where we lack water. We can use the groundwater and desalination to mitigate that time. So it's not the renewable water resources, and it's not the solution to all the problem.
Yes, Min.
Thank you, Dr. Essam. I'm so surprised and sad that you didn't mention health on your agenda, but although you mentioned the hepatitis C example from an environmental lens, but that's a different perspective. Health is very important, and the link between health and wealth of the nations is established. But
I agree with you that health, I talked about the diseases many times.
He has been saying diseases under the umbrella of the environment since the morning.
Yeah, but it's a different lens. I mean, I know I sound like everybody's looking at their own interest. That's my interest, I admit, but it's really very important. And I can assure you that even though we know that hepatitis C, for example, that you've been mentioning, is on the rise, we don't know what's the prevalence. We don't know. It's a black box. We know nothing about it. Hypertension is like the mapping of hypertension. The last map was in the 80s. So it's like the health is a black box in Egypt. Anyway, that's not my question.
But I agree with you.
Okay, thanks.
Health is a crucial thing. And again, we have to fight poverty, ignorance, and diseases.
Yes.
These are the driver of the violence. And unless you fight these, you will always have a violence.
It's a basic right.
This is today we know in the government that, at least in the president's office, that this is the path Egypt should go forward, fighting these three things.
It's not on your agenda. That's fine.
Yeah, there are many things that are not on this agenda. But there is an interview which was made a week ago with CNN, and actually it was all about the real enemy of Egypt, and I clearly say these are the three enemies we have to fight.
Okay. So my question, how do you plan to operationalize, like let's say we all in this room agree today that we go back with you and...
Today one?
Today we all agree to go back and help, give a hand, and yes, we want to do something. I'm sure everybody in this room wants to do that. How do you plan to operationalize the stream or the brain gain back again to Egypt? Because that needs to be streamed or operationalized in a way that works actually on the ground.
Okay.
And Egypt has, inside Egypt currently, other people are living there and they have the capacity to help as well, but they are not being utilized. How do you plan to use the people, the capacity that is there?
Okay, that's a good question. We were talking about it this morning. So what we plan is many of the scientists and engineers and the doctors abroad here can help in advisory roles for many of the ministers and many of the executive that exist right now in Egypt. And we are trying to have a quota that at least half of the advisors in the next government should be from the scientists, engineers, and the technical people from abroad. So we hope to use as much of the population abroad in these advisory roles, and we know that they have a life, they have jobs, they are committed here, so we will try to have a minimal interference with their life here and have them engaged in a gradual way, because every time you bring someone from here, as example, and you put it in one of our university there, and you've seen in TV maybe a few days ago what the difference between the campuses, between two universities and behaviors, people will feel rejected, alienated, marginalized, incapable, and they will just disappear. So again, we have a gradual program, which we talked about this morning, and this is what I mentioned, people playing advisory roles from their position here, and will come to do punctual actions in Egypt. And if we keep this for a long time, then probably this will change. And also one of the things, and I know many of you do not like it, I always ask you guys, when you go to Cairo, please show in the media. Why? Many people say, I don't like to show in the media. That any time you don't show in the media, someone worst, bad, show in the media. So if we don't fill, the media is like a cup. If you don't fill it with water, you fill it with air. And to a point that on the same station in 3 different programs you hear there is no truth anymore. So you have to show as an example, you have to empower the people around you. And you have to bear some of the mishabits of the media. Also, one of the things that I see the way we attract the people. First is that we don't have any record of the good people abroad. This is something we started to do. And we asked the association here that there will be some efforts to have an assessment of the students, Egyptian students abroad and their expertise so that they can contribute. We have no record because all the governments that passed the Mubarak era mostly did not want these people to come and help. Just they have no role. They were seen as noise. They were seen as there is no place for them. And the message was clear, just stay wherever you are and don't come to bother us. And now this is changing, not because we're trying to be good, but this is because this is what needs to be done.
Tamer.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll ask the question.
So here, okay. Islam, you choose.
He has been waiting there forever. Let's go.
Okay, thanks for coming. It was a great talk, and thanks for coming all over. I have a question, which is a slight variation on Yasmin's question. There are, so because of 2 factors mainly that were mentioned in this lecture, time and enthusiasm. For time, the government is usually like a very heavy entity and it's hard to move very fast. And for enthusiasm, it's always the youth, it's often the youth that provides it. So I'm talking now not about the people that are here that can go and help, but the people that are in Egypt and that often come up with new initiatives and things like that. And there's many of them actually sitting in this room, not me, I'm still on the couch. Is there any initiative or idea or thought in the government or in your team to include them?
Okay, thank you for your question. So as I mentioned, there is the initiatives to gather and assess these people. And of course, the times where we are make it very hard to have fast initiatives. But that does not mean we have to wait until the times get better, because they will only get better when these initiatives will be fulfilled. So the current initiative we have, it's one thing we call the Science Council, Egypt Science Council. The Egypt Science Council is the scientists abroad participating in an advisory role for the nation in 15 subgroups that represent 15 disciplines in science and engineering, and they advise on policies to be made for the next 5 years. So that's the council we're trying to set right now. I agree with you, there should be a more dedicated entities to host these initiatives. We try to do this from the position where I am. It's not always easy. So what we do is that I take the best initiatives, the top best that are in the research priorities, and isolate them from the routine and the bureaucracy by giving them some exemptions in law so that they can prosper. And that's what we did with the water program, with the nuclear program. We're trying to do that with the space program. But we will need some time to be able to really to absorb all the new ideas we have.
If I just might clarify, this maybe might be more applicable to the educational part versus the research part, where there's a lot of initiatives from the youth.
So, yeah, things in research are better than they are in education. And actually, Egypt ranked the nation 42 on the planet for the productivity in research, which I'm not sure if it is very accurate, but it ranked 148, for education, so the last. And that's, make no mistake, whatever the ranking is, I mean, being 148, tell it by itself. And so for education, things are worse because it's a public issue, and the resistance to change the life of 18 million students is very harsh. And actually, that's where we always hit the wall of the traditions, and we are working on it very tough. And I give you just a very simple example that we put a tablet at some schools. So we experiment about 3,000 tablets for schools. You might think that families were very happy. Actually, more than 2/3 of the families were unhappy of their kids having a tablet, because they think that the tablet, where they will go on the internet and they will look to bad things, and so they didn't want it. They want the sharp one. So these are the things we're fighting on every day. And then you have the media, which is playing against you. Media do not want news; they want scandals, and they just like any industry who suffered in the time of revolution from being slowed down. The same thing, media have slowed down because of the revolution. And in fact, why there is so many talk shows, it's not because people have something to talk about. No, it's just because the movies industries have been hit. So actors and people do not appear in TV anymore to show movies or song. So now they appear in talk shows to talk about events, commenting on events. So because the movie industry was hit so strongly, actually, this is one of the reasons you see so many talk shows, and you have to look at it, the number of actors, like on Sky News, actually there are 2 actors without names that are driving talk shows. So it's tough with the media. They're not helping with the change.
Thank you, Dr. Essam. Right here. I just wanted to ask a more fundamental question. Maybe because I don't understand the problem with the Nile. I bet a lot of people don't as well. But if all the water, the Nile comes in the end to Egypt, then why is it that we're not, for example, reusing that water before throwing it back into the sea?
Okay, because there is a minimum amount of water flow you have to keep and to maintain the ecosystem of the river. If you use all the water, nothing goes to the Mediterranean, you will have seawater intruding, going inland, and that will put salt into your soil and will decrease your productivity of agriculture. It will kill every type of agriculture, basically. So you need to maintain a minimum amount of flow to maintain the health of the river and the ecosystem of the river.
Can you cut that flow, put dams, or can you put dams to cut that flow?
I mean, the Netherlands have done something like that. It's very expensive. It's very expensive and need a lot of technology, and which we don't have right now.
Khalid. First of all, thanks for the initiative and the outreach for Egyptian abroad. My question is divided into 2 parts. The first part is a continuation about Yasmin's and Tamer's question about what are the steps for the long range, or the short range steps to encourage people more to go back to Egypt. And this is a very personal point for me, because I try to go back and do some stuff, but you know the barriers, and that you have to have some kind of connection to be able to do something. So not only you outreaching them, but like making like a website or something that makes people who are ready to help have some kind of like mechanism to help Egypt. This is the first part. The second part of the question is that unfortunately, for the past 2 years, it have been temporary governments. Everybody comes with an initiative. Dr. Will starts. Everybody comes with initiatives, and nobody maintain anything. So what is the mechanism, or what is the way you are going to maintain these initiatives when Dr. Heggy is not here anymore? It's more about not persons. It's about a system. Can you maintain a system that encourage Egyptians abroad to go back and help Egypt? That's it. Thank you very much.
Yeah, many thanks. It's an excellent question. The main reason why initiatives will fall is because the head of the country in the president's office, science was absent. So there was nothing that was called the National Strategic Plan for Science. There was nothing in the president's office level that was called the science, the priorities for Egypt. The president himself only hear about the science if you go visit a school or a university. Today, by establishing a science advisor, which I'm only the first now to do this, and then there will come other person, there will be always a voice for science on the top leadership of the country. Any project, all these initiatives like the one with Dr. Zuhail, which I speak with him on a very regular basis, they suffered from the lack of a vision from the leadership of the country of their utility. And now that we established this utility and we created a position, whoever is holding this position, but we created that position that would always be there to maintain the science priorities of the nation. And I also have to tell you one thing, because I worked as assistant professor in Cairo University. We always think that because we have good ideas, we always think that because we are educated, then life is just. And then we will go and people will welcome us with open arms and say, hey, let's do the nice idea. And you have to remember that justice is not an automatic process. It never happened. This is why we have a ministry for justice, we have a secretary for justice. That's why. So it's not automatic. And we should not be depressed that people are not receptive. We should fight. Like you see the Mars project. When we tried it in 1998 in Egypt and people say this will never work, and then we send it on Mars, 10 years after we were on the cover of Science magazine, it's just because we have to deal with our expectations. My expectations from the government were sub-zero. I knew that I would only get bureaucracy and very, very minimal help, if any. So that is how we should be starting, that be self-sufficient and be a fighter, not demanding justice, but you have to create the justice by being a fighter.
Just so from your answer, I can understand that there is a position called science advisor for the president that is going to be maintained when the new election happens, new government come, and this is already known in the.
This is already known.
I know that you don't like political issues, but everybody agree on like the higher levels that this thing would be maintained.
Yeah, everyone agree. All the people who want to apply for the presidency in the next phase, they come. We talked and we say you need to maintain many things, and this is one of them. And you need to maintain it if you would like to be maintained. Otherwise, what we'll keep in the cycle of voting and changing presidents on a yearly basis.
One final question from Fadi.
Dr. Heggy, thank you very much, and it's a real honor to listen to you today. I really like the discussion about science, technology, and education, but I mean, since I was like maybe 6-7 years old, I always heard about these kind of things, and I think that science and education does not exist in a void. So I think in a void.
Yeah.
So I think we are missing the big picture. And 3 years ago, I came to this amazing country, and what I realized that the key reason for advancement technology and innovation is mainly for two key things, mainly defense applications and entrepreneurship. So I have been waiting to listen your thoughts about entrepreneurship and startups, because this could be a real driver and a real player utilizing all kind of research that's happening on universities and research centers. So I don't know what we are doing in terms of entrepreneurship, which is also a major role for creating jobs and stimulating the economy and so forth. So I don't know what's your perspective on that.
So as I mentioned, that the role for scientific research is to be a dynamo for the industry, to switch our economy from resource-based to knowledge-based by having technology development. We need to have an update to the way we handle small entrepreneurial companies in Egypt. And I agree with you, there's a lot of effort that need to be done, that right now it's not as encouraging environment as it is here. And the real shame would be for me to lie to you and tell you that there is a solid plan. Actually, there is no solid plan at this point. It's sad, but with help of people like you, and we will take that, I will translate that to people who are in charge in the Minister of Economy and Industry and ask them what serious plan they have. But from where I am, I haven't heard about a serious plan to encourage small entrepreneurship.
Thank you for your honesty. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the wonderful event in my perspective. Thank you for your time, Dr. Heggy. And thank you, Islam, for moderating. There's one final group of people I have to thank. Thank you for the board and members of the Egyptian Student Association. We really, really worked hard on this one. You have no idea what's happening in the background, so thank you very much. We'll see you next time.
Many thanks. Many thanks.
Enthusiasm. For time, the government is usually like a very heavy entity and it's hard to move very fast. And for enthusiasm, it's always the youth, it's often the youth that provides it. So I'm talking now not about the people that are here that can go and help, but the people that are in Egypt and that often come up with new initiatives and things like that. And there's many of them actually sitting in this room, not me, I'm still on the couch. Is there any initiative or idea or thought in the government or in your team to include them?
Okay, thank you for your question. So as I mentioned, there is the initiatives to gather and assess these people. And of course, the times where we are make it very hard to have fast initiatives. But that does not mean we have to wait until the times get better, because they will only get better when these initiatives will be fulfilled. So the current initiative we have, it's one thing we call the Science Council, Egypt Science Council. The Egypt Science Council is the scientists abroad participating in an advisory role for the nation in 15 subgroups that represent 15 disciplines in science and engineering, and they advise on policies to be made for the next 5 years. So that's the council we're trying to set right now. I agree with you, there should be a more dedicated entities to host these initiatives. We try to do this from the position where I am. It's not always easy. So what we do is that I take the best initiatives, the top best that are in the research priorities, and isolate them from the routine and the bureaucracy by giving them some exemptions in laws so that they can prosper. And that's what we did with the water program, with the nuclear program. We're trying to do that with the space program. But we will need some time to be able to really to absorb all the new ideas we have.
If I just might clarify, this maybe might be more applicable to the educational part versus the research part, where there's a lot of initiatives from the youth.
So, things in research are better than they are in education. And actually, Egypt ranked the nation 42 on the planet for the productivity in research, which I'm not sure if it is very accurate, but it ranked 148 for education, so the last. And that's, make no mistake, whatever the ranking is, I mean, being 148 tell it by itself. And so for education, things are worse because it's a public issue, and the resistance to change the life of 18 million students is very harsh. And actually, that's where we always hit the wall of the traditions, and we are working on it very tough. And I give you just a very simple example that we put a tablet at some schools. So we experiment about 3,000 tablets for schools. You might think that families were very happy. Actually, more than 2/3 of the families were unhappy of their kids having a tablet, because they think that the tablet, where they will go on the internet and they will look to bad things, and so they didn't want it. They want the sharp one. So these are the things we're fighting on every day. And then you have the media, which is playing against you. Media do not want news; they want scandals, and they just like any industry who suffered in the time of revolution from being slowed down. The same thing, media have slowed down because of the revolution. And in fact, why there is so many talk shows, it's not because people have something to talk about. No, it's just because the movies industries have been hit. So actors and people do not appear in TV anymore to show movies or song. So now they appear in talk shows to talk about events, commenting on events. So because the movie industry was hit so strongly, actually, this is one of the reasons you see so many talk shows, and you have to look at it, the number of actors, like on Sky News, actually there are 2 actors without names that are driving talk shows. So it's tough with the media. They're not helping with the change.
Thank you, Dr. Essam. Right here. I just wanted to ask a more fundamental question. Maybe because I don't understand the problem with the Nile. I bet a lot of people don't as well. But if all the water, the Nile comes in the end to Egypt, then why is it that we're not, for example, reusing that water before throwing it back into the sea?
Okay, because there is a minimum amount of water flow you have to keep and to maintain the ecosystem of the river. If you use all the water, nothing goes to the Mediterranean, you will have seawater intruding, going inland, and that will put salt into your soil and will decrease your productivity of agriculture. It will kill every type of agriculture, basically. So you need to maintain a minimum amount of flow to maintain the health of the river and the ecosystem of the river.
Can you cut that flow, put dams, or can you put dams to cut that flow?
I mean, the Netherlands have done something like that. It's very expensive. It's very expensive and need a lot of technology, and which we don't have right now.
Khalid?
First of all, thanks for the initiative and the outreach for Egyptian abroad. My question is divided into 2 parts. The first part is a continuation about Yasmin's and Tamer's question about what are the steps for the long range, the short range steps to encourage people more to go back to Egypt. And this is a very personal point for me, because I try to go back and do some stuff, but you know the barriers, and that you have to have some kind of connection to be able to do something. So not only you outreaching them, but like making like a website or something that makes people who are ready to help have some kind of like mechanism to help Egypt. This is the first part. The second part of the question is that unfortunately, for the past 2 years, it have been temporary governments. Everybody comes with an initiative. Dr. Will starts. Everybody comes with initiatives, and nobody maintain anything. So what is the mechanism, or what is the way you are going to maintain these initiatives when Dr. Heggy is not here anymore? It's more about not persons. It's about a system. Can you maintain a system that encourage Egyptians abroad to go back and help Egypt? That's it. Thank you very much.
Yeah, many thanks. It's an excellent question. The main reason why initiatives will fall is because the head of the country in the president office, science was absent. So there was nothing that was called the National Strategic Plan for Science. There was nothing in the president office level that was called the science the priorities for Egypt. The president himself only hear about the science if you go visit a school or a university. Today, by establishing a science advisor, which I'm only the first now to do this, and then there will become other person, there will be always a voice for science on the top leadership of the country. Any project, all these initiatives like the one with Dr. Zuhail, which I speak with him on a very regular basis, they suffered from the lack of a vision from the leadership of the country of their utility. And now that we established this utility and we created a position, whoever is holding this position, but we created that position that would always be there to maintain the science priorities of the nation. And I also have to tell you one thing, because I worked as assistant professor at Cairo University. We always think that because we have good ideas, we always think that because we are educated, then life is just. And then we will go and people will welcome us with open arms and say, hey, let's do the nice idea. And you have to remember that justice is not an automatic process. It never happened. This is why we have a ministry for justice, we have a secretary for justice. That's why. So it's not automatic. And we should not be depressed that people are not receptive. We should fight. Like you see the Mars project. When we tried it in 1998 in Egypt and people say this will never work, and then we send it on Mars, 10 years after we were on the cover of Science magazine, it's just because we have to deal with our expectations. My expectations from the government were sub-zero. I knew that I will only get bureaucracy and very, very minimal help, if any. So that is how we should be starting, that be self-sufficient and be a fighter, not demanding justice, but you have to create the justice by being a fighter.
Just so from your answer, I can understand that there is a position called science advisor for the president that is going to be maintained when the new election happens, new government come, and this is already known in the.
This is already known.
I know that you don't like political issues, but everybody agree on like the higher levels that this thing would be maintained.
Yeah, everyone agree. All the people who want to apply for the presidency, the next phase, they come. We talked and we say you need to maintain many things, and this is one of them. And you need to maintain it if you would like to be maintained. Otherwise, what we'll keep in the cycle of voting and changing presidents on a yearly basis.
One final question from Fadi.
Dr. Heggy, thank you very much, and it's a real honor to listen to you today. I really like the discussion about science, technology, and education, but I mean, since I was like maybe 6-7 years old, I always heard about these kind of things, and I think that science and education does not exist in a void. So I think in a void.
Yeah.
So I think we are missing the big picture. And 3 years ago, I came to this amazing country, and what I realized that the key reason for advancement technology and innovation is mainly for two key things, mainly defense applications and entrepreneurship. So I have been waiting to listen your thoughts about entrepreneurship and startups, because this could be a real driver and a real player utilizing all kind of research that's happening on universities and research centers. So I don't know what we are doing in terms of entrepreneurship, which is also a major role for creating jobs and stimulating the economy and so forth. So I don't know what's your perspective on that.
So as I mentioned, that the role for scientific research is to be a dynamo for the industry, to switch our economy from resource-based to knowledge-based by having technology development. We need to have an update to the way we handle small entrepreneurial companies in Egypt. And I agree with you. There's a lot of effort that need to be done, that right now it's not as encouraging environment as it is here. And the real shame would be for me to lie to you and tell you that there is a solid plan. Actually, there is no solid plan at this point. It's sad, but with help of people like you, and we will take that, I will translate that to people who are in charge in the Minister of Economy and Industry and ask them what serious plan they have. But from where I am, I haven't heard about a serious plan to encourage small entrepreneurship.
Thank you for your honesty. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the wonderful event in my perspective. Thank you for your time, Dr. Heggy. And thank you, Islam, for moderating. There's one final group of people I have to thank. Thank you for the board and members of the Egyptian Student Association. We really, really worked hard on this one. You have no idea what's happening in the background, so thank you very much. We'll see you next time.
Many thanks. Many thanks.